Hello, everybody. Happy November 5th. The ghosts are gone, but we're still here with government and security stories to start the week.
We have a shirt like that at store.level1text.com. The light has gone, but I still work.
I don't have that mug on the table right now.
Do the ghosts really ever leave? I think they just get to party that one day, right?
Yeah.
They're always around watching you, judging you. And you know who else is always watching and judging is Jessica Rosenworcel. And she has decided all of a sudden that she is pro satellite internet.
Mobile dead spots will end when space-based and ground communications merge. Okay. It is really sad, though, if you want to maintain a ping, like you send one ping every 1 second and you just have your phone doing that on a cross-country drive, it's really bad. It's really astonishingly bad. It's almost what I would expect the network state to be after, 5 or 10 years after nuclear Armageddon. It's like, oh, the grid almost works right again, except there's never been nuclear Armageddon.
Not in this timeline.
Well, that was a great lead-in for nuclear Armageddon because how do you plan for it? It's not like you can look back at anything that's ever happened before and say this is how it's going to go, but perhaps there's a simulation.
The Wall Street Journal's headline is 1 million people play this video war game, but so does the Pentagon. And then it goes on to describe this kind of thing as navel gazing, which, okay, and then they say, well, this one's different.
Was it Combat PE or something like that? Or Paywall? I can't remember the name of the game. I did look it up. It's like
heard of it.
Grand strategy, you're just looking at a map type of thing. But apparently it simulates very faithfully almost every piece of warfighting equipment that exists in the world from all countries. And so the Pentagon...
Wasn't that what Arma was supposed to do?
But this is not from...
the zombies.
Arma's from the soldier's perspective. Mm-hmm. This is the general.
Yeah.
So you can hey, what if they have outdated Russian fighter jets and we have the new F-35s? What's going to happen here? Yeah. So that was interesting.
You can go play it now. It's from a tiny company in the UK.
Also, it's on sale right now. Well, it might not be by the time you see this.
Yeah.
And artificial intelligence, we've learned, we've gone through sort of like the stages of grief, but it's the stages of AI where it's nothing really that big, and then it is something really big, and it's not going to take the jobs, and then it's definitely taking the jobs, and then we want it to take the jobs, and it's not going to autonomously kill people into...
The U.S. military makes its first confirmed OpenAI purchase for warfighting robots, or warfighting forces.
I'm sure
it was a bit of a slip.
I'm reading the tea leaves there a bit, but, there you go. There wasn't really a lot of detail. I was like, how do they plan to do this? And it's like, it's going to help with logistics. And so it's just, this seems like a little bit of an inflammatory headline, except for the department that does that is the one that bought it. But it seems like a nothing burger right now.
But in Africa. Only in Africa right now for some reason. I guess because they think they can maybe test things out there and not get noticed.
Yeah.
But yeah, they did not make any specifics about how exactly they were going to use it. They also made some quotes about how accurate and how it could help keep things from being confusing. And a lot of people followed up and they were like, there's nothing accurate about AI. It hallucinates terribly.
Imagine your logistics chain being controlled by AI and not knowing if your team's going to get MREs this week. I mean, that's probably human error causes that too, but...
Well, human error and greed caused a lot of people not to have their delicious sweetness from McDonald's for so long. But now the U.S. government has stepped in and given us a reprieve.
U.S. Copyright Office grants the DMCA exception for ice cream machines. Basically, if you're a McDonald's franchise owner, you can now repair your ice cream machine. Meanwhile, it is somewhat dubious under this same law if you own a collection of DVDs, if you want to format shift those DVDs as a consumer and user of those kinds of things. You have enjoyed that right since the 19th century.
Those 19th century DVDs.
No, I mean just copyright shifting, format shifting, that sort of thing.
So not just ice cream machines. I think this was like restaurant things in general, right? So I guess if you have a
food service machines, like a juice machine,
a fryolator, perhaps you should be able to repair them, tear them down, research them. The Taylor Corporation was the one that ran those ice cream machines, and they were very draconian. Remember the company that actually figured out a way to bypass that stuff?
Yeah.
And they sued them out of existence.
That's because McDonald's and the company were both making money on the franchise owners, which is, again, if you look at what is happening on the face of it, why does it take this level of effort to say, this seems like something that is against individual property rights, and therefore we as a culture should not support it?
Well, something else that's against individuals in a big way, but something that we've learned from the past that if it can be done, it will be done, which is surveillance, which is why we have to be so careful about that whole situation because somebody's going to do it. And right now, a lot of somebodies are doing it.
U.S. Consumer Watchdog cautions businesses on surveillance of workers. But what if the business is the surveillance of individuals, not their workers, but the people that use the app? Because all of this stuff could apply to modern app makers. 3/4 of the apps in the Apple App Store, I'm sure, would all apply. Would all the cautions would apply.
You are allowed to surveil your cattle, pigs, inventory, which is what we are to those apps.
You know, your property. You have property rights over people.
Chattel.
Yeah.
Also, Meta, like, isn't that the whole business model of Meta?
Or any social media, really, including YouTube.com.
And if your local government isn't into surveillance maybe as much as other governments, well, bad news. Are you part of the United Nations? Because they've decided that globally they're in charge and they're going to decide who gets surveilled. And here's a spoiler, it's everybody.
6 senators tell the Biden administration the UN cybercrime treaty must be changed. And that is not the headline that I would have led with. The headline that I would have led with was 6 senators were asked to tell the difference between these two things. And it looked like draconian authoritarian insanity and draconian authoritarian insanity. And they're like, we can't, like, you're passing a law that is authoritarian. Like, we shouldn't do that. And there's only 6 people that spoke up and said, wait a minute, this doesn't look good at all.
I think these are the only people who actually read it.
Had it read for them, probably. But yeah, this thing is insane. It requires pretty much everything to be surveilled, and it requires no warrant surveillance type of stuff. You know, this is like Patriot Act on steroids, but globally.
You know, the thing in the UK we always complain about, the Snoopers Charter? It's like that. So, but we just need to know what you're doing. Or it doesn't have to be a person surveilling it. We can have an AI surveil you. And it's like, that's worse because of the hallucination problem.
That doesn't make me feel any better.
And because it's so easy just to do that and archive it and keep it for later.
Yeah.
So you don't even have to get caught now. Get caught later. And we have, as usual, because we are coming up on the election, which will be the day of when you watch this, the hacking is just at a fever pitch.
China hacked phones of Donald Trump's family, says the FBI. Investigation expanded to as Eric Trump and his son-in-law targeted in a sophisticated hacking operation. Haven't they all been targeted? I mean, I'm sure that it's not just China at this point. Probably India, probably also one of the Middle Eastern countries. Like, they're unprepared to deal with this. Jeff Bezos was unprepared to deal with this, and he's not a moron.
And kicking kids off of social media is a hot topic. Is that free speech? Are we infringing on it? Or are we just protecting the kids from the horrors that is the algorithm? It's a very dividing subject.
Wholly inconsistent with the First Amendment, Florida Attorney General sued over law barring children's social media use. I thought this was an interesting take on this. It's like, well, it's up to the parents. The parents can decide, which is kind of something we always advocate for. But then it occurred to me, how is this any different than the library stuff? Like, if a parent decides that their children can read Catcher in the Rye, and that is one of the books that has been banned by the library, how is that any different?
Well, I mean, this isn't subsidized by the government, so this is just a private entity. Like, we pay for the libraries, so somebody should have some. I mean, I'm not for censoring anything in the libraries, but that's definitely different too. And we have three stories about this. You can tell that there's a little bit of astroturfing going on.
I was like, who does this make? Like, I read this earlier this week, and I was like, who asked for this, and like, who thought this was a good idea?
The social media team,
I guess,
at the campaign.
Kamala Harris and Walz launched their own Fortnite map. I didn't find the story anywhere near as interesting as apparently Tim Walz was just a fiend for playing the Dreamcast. That was the interesting story this week.
Well, I mean, this one's probably got more reach, right? Because they also got some popular Fortnite streamers. I don't recognize any of these names, but they are going to do their own special thing about this map.
You know what would be amazing? Watching Tim Walz stream Vintage Story as he looks for copper and or chalk and just suffers needlessly at the hands of bears and wolves.
And those stupid, creepy sloth things, what are they called?
Drifters.
Drifters, yeah.
Also, it seems weird based on their stance in terms of, shooting people, that they're going to have a game sponsored by them about shooting people.
Something about it just feels like weirdly like we're trying too hard.
Kamala was also responsible for the Backpage shutdown, which is troubling for a lot of reasons. Because a lot of hardcore newsies were like, this is fine. It was not fine.
That must be a Fortnite feature I'm not familiar with. But yeah, Tim Walz, as you said, is on Twitch.
Vice presidential candidate Tim Walz shows off his crazy taxi skills during Twitch stream. I didn't watch this, but apparently it was just completely nuts.
Now, do you think they actually dug out a Dreamcast from somewhere, or is he emulating?
He's literally violating federal law. That's going to be one of the exhibits in my eventual Supreme Court case. It's like
there might be a PC port, though, right? I don't know.
Maybe.
I kind of doubt it, but maybe.
I think Trump's on Twitch as well. We're just living in the strangest timeline.
But he just broadcasts his
rallies and stuff. Yeah,
right?
Doesn't actually game.
No gaming. He's an IRL streamer.
Do you think? Can you imagine him using a controller or figuring out WASD?
Well, I would like to see AOC might be able to do it, but I doubt Tim Walz would be able to do 3D mouse keyboard movement. Right?
There was in the story about the Wargame simulation. There was an amazing acronym there that I'd heard before, but I'd forgotten. That was it was just a bunch of guys standing around
I remember that.
Yeah, and it was like that's an acronym that I need to incorporate more into my daily life. But because that was one of the first stories that I read as I was reading the stories that I hadn't otherwise read this week, and that set the tone for all of these stories. And I really do think that, especially among our viewership, there is a groundswell of people that are keen to get in there and just solve problems and do stuff. But we can't get through to other people that are keen to get in there and do stuff because of the people just standing around not doing anything. And all of this has devolved to the point where it's I just don't have the energy, because if I put any energy into trying to suss this out, it is a waste of energy versus just let me get in there and do stuff.
Well, you're also going to miss this one. Unfortunately, this will have already happened by the time you hear this. But there is another instance of this coming up.
Walz and AOC are going to play Madden on Twitch to appeal to young men.
No, I think they actually like that game. I don't think that's a ploy at all.
Oh, the two of them, you mean?
Actually, didn't AOC do... I thought this was funnier. She did Among Us. Because that's a game about lying. I would actually love to see all our politicians play that, because they'd probably be good at it, right? They're good at lying. That could be some real, I can learn some techniques to lie in here.
I didn't see in that story, did they mention how long the crazy taxi stream lasted?
Oh, no, I didn't see.
Do you think they, answered anything? I bet that chat was probably moving pretty fast, though. Right?
Yeah. They might have to put it in slow mode.
But I mean, the long form stuff is definitely where we need to go with our politicians, right? This sound bite, standing at a podium stuff is archaic.
Well, all of that again is just dudes standing around. It's I would like you to stream actually working on. It's today's problem I'm going to solve is we don't have enough proper crosswalk markings in downtown DC. We can start small. It's what are you going to do today to make that problem go away?
I'll have 20 meetings about it, and then at the end of it, I'll be exhausted.
Exactly. And it's we could get Carl with a bucket of paint. I can send Carl out there right now with a safety vest. He can get it done. Let's just do it.
Well, do you remember the company that had all of the advertising data and then got hacked and lost it all and then went out of business? And we talked about...
No, not that one, the other one.
Well, but then we talked about it won't take long for another one to grab the brass ring. And here we go.
An investigation exposes data brokers using ads to help track almost any phone. Yeah, I was like, I would only like to target phones that have been in this apartment building and then this restaurant and this thing and this other thing, just tracking someone's social media posts. And it's like, oh, I'm showing this ad to one person. I know who they are. It's weird how that works.
And it's all for sale. And over in the European Union, they are looking at Temu, who possibly sells counterfeit products, possibly sells products that could be dangerous and illegal, maybe doesn't police the sellers quite as much as it should.
The European headline is the European Commission sets its regulatory crosshairs on Temu for illegal product sales. What sort of illegal product sales? There were sellers that had been banned from selling things, like they had lost a court case. And so Temu should say, you're not allowed to sell in the EU. They're still selling in the EU. But also, it implied that there were products like bath bombs. You know how sometimes we cover, it's like, oh, this is a bath bomb. But really, that is like a precursor ingredient for drug manufacturing. They also sell that kind of stuff too.
Which probably wouldn't do you any favors if you used it as bath bomb, right?
Yeah.
You're going to end up with some bad rashes.
Maybe a little racing heart. And over in Europe, the Microsoft versus Google, it's actually just every cloud provider versus every other cloud provider, and they're constantly trying to curry favor with the leaders.
The CNBC headline is Microsoft says Google is running shadow campaigns in Europe to influence regulators.
What's the thing that's like every claim is a confession? Do you think that's Microsoft's also doing that?
We covered almost this exact same story about 2 years ago, and because I thought I was having a stroke or something, the headline was Google accuses Microsoft of running a shadow campaign in Europe.
They're probably both doing it, right?
Yeah, they're both right.
Yeah.
The context of the original story also centered on Germany because of using their cloud products. In this case, I would say it's even more hilarious because it looked like Google's cloud products are just not competitive with Microsoft's products. And Google seemed to be saying, we're not competitive because we comply with what the European Union intends. So you should use our products because they are more in line with your dinosaur technology philosophy.
Well, in Germany, the thing about it is, that while they're fighting, the people on the ground, like the actual European people, they're seeing some tough times. Just like everybody around the globe is. The economies of the world are not strong, and it's leading to some desperation.
Criminals are looting millions from ATMs in Europe. Here's why Germany is a prime target. My version of this headline was, criminals are using explosives to blow up ATMs and cause massive property damage because things have gotten so dire.
Homemade, using mostly fireworks. You break them down, make yourself a little explodey pillow there.
The more ingenious thing is that they've figured out approximately the right number of explosives to explode the ATM without damaging the cash on the inside.
Yeah.
That's an amazing feat of pyrotechnics.
But
The Germans are great engineers.
It's not just a stereotype.
It does, however, damage everything else around it. It's not a shaped charge. It's a big explosion, and so they actually end up doing more damage to the buildings than they get away with in cash.
They had what was it, $160,000 in cash, and I was like, good Lord, $700,000 in property damage.
Probably euros, but it's pretty close. And this one is very, very obvious, and actually consolidated two stories because there was a headline about China, and there was also a headline about India, and the Register has put them together nicely for us.
Chinese attackers accessed Canadian government networks for 5 years. Yes, it turns out that you can't just buy things and deploy them as is. There may be some holes in them, whether deliberate or intentional.
They also added India to their cyber enemy list.
Yeah, things are getting real dicey. Apparently, did you read? It was in one of the articles you added too that part of the reason there's tension here with India is because there are. The cultural separatists from India a lot of them are living in Canada and blogging from Canada and saying, hey, this other, caste party in India is needlessly hard on us. We just want peace. And it's I had no idea that things were that culturally divisive in India. It would be like us systematically suppressing rednecks. Not that there's a negative connotation with whatever social aspect that is in India.
What country are rednecks from?
No, I mean I'm proud of my redneck heritage, and so it's just sometimes I feel like
But you were born in this country.
Yeah. Well, I mean, would I ever have to like move to Canada to escape persecution? I don't know. Maybe. But the way things are going, it's just like, oh, you're from there. You're not allowed to make any important decisions.
L1 moving to Canada.
There's not very many people up there. I thought there was like 300 million people up there.
Well, there's like 3 cities and an iceberg.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's lots of open land there.
It's like 30 million.
And Google is a company that started here and went into Canada and basically started to extract wealth from them like they do from us. And Canada was like, wait a minute, guys. It seems like you're destroying everything in your quest to monopolize the world. And so they come up with these weird rules about Google not being able to link to news stories and stuff like that. And then it's all been kind of watered down.
The headline is Google granted 5-year exemption from Canada's Online News Act. Again, I would rewrite the headline. Google is paying $100 million a year for 5 years to Canada's online news agencies to avoid having the actual amount that they have to pay calculated.
I thought the $100 million was for the whole 5 years.
Or the $100 million for 5 years. Yeah, not $100 million per year, but $100 million for 5. I think you're right. But how insane is it that Google, has done that math and said, oh, if they actually calculate how much we should pay, it's going to be way more than $100 million in 5 years. So let's just pay them.
Speaking of way more.
But that's only Google.
Yeah.
So Facebook, for example, still is supposed to pay the full amount. So Google went in, set the regulation, excused themselves from it. What a masterful play.
Well, the full amount that Meta has to pay has not been calculated yet. It could be $5. It could be $100 million in a year. We don't know.
It's going to be $100 million. Yeah. And as you point out, Krista, this one is what a great headline, right? Because you have a
can't even read it.
It's a decillion.
Russian court fines Google $20 decillion, which is more than the GDP of the planet.
That sounds fake, like decillion.
Now, the Google, Googol, was 100 zeros, right?
Yeah.
Why not just go for that? That'd be such a great, synergy right there.
Do you think when the editor was like thinking of the title for this article, like they were going to do something just like a lot of money, and they're like, no, just put the full number in there.
Why not?
Look how many zeros. How does that scale on mobile?
I don't know. It's too difficult to do without a keyboard.
Yeah.
Yeah, so obviously that's never going to get paid, and it's just a headline. And Russia has also rolled out some new laws because they are having a bit of inflation. Their currency's taking some hits, and they want to make sure that the measuring sticks for that are under tight control.
Russia publishes new crypto law expanding state control over digital assets. Basically, they want your crypto wallet keys, and they'll do what they please with them, and you will not complain.
And it'll be tracked completely, although that's almost all true here as well. Know your customer means control your customer. And over in Indonesia, Apple came in and they were like, hey guys, we're going to help Indonesia. We're going to invest and we're going to do everything that you need us to do because there's a requirement that you have to do that. To do business in Indonesia, you got to pay them 40%, which is funny because Apple knows all about paying percentages, right? But they didn't pay it all.
iPhone 16 now banned in Indonesia over Apple's unfulfilled investment commitments. They basically promised to invest the equivalent of about $100 million US, and they actually invested about 15.
No, I think it was worse. It was way more than that. The difference wasn't huge. The $14 million difference out of 95.
Oh.
So they're serious about getting their $14 million.
Oh, I misread it as
in these inflationary times,
as it was 95 million short. So yeah, 14 million.
So they'll pay that, right? I mean, why
Yeah.
wouldn't you?
Or just find something else to invest in.
Yeah, but people already have the phones there.
Yeah.
It's unclear exactly. Like some of the people, the article said that they would like hunt you down if you were a tourist with an iPhone, but it sounds like that might not be true.
Yeah.
And we have sanctions against Russia. Wow, I should have put those two stories together, huh?
Whoops.
That are crippling them, right? And China too. They're not allowed to buy any of these chips. Well, it doesn't work.
Indian firms secretly funneled AMD, Nvidia AI GPUs to Russia. Sanctions reportedly skirted hundreds of millions of dollars of hardware. Probably also China. Like you read a story and it's like, wait a minute, it sounds like China's involved, but the story doesn't mention that. That's weird.
I thought India and China kind of have like a, not fully adversarial, I guess, but not particularly warm relationship.
No, they had their bilateral trade talks a couple of weeks ago, and they were friendly.
That's surprising.
Very friendly.
Yeah, but they do have those border disputes from now and again.
They're frenemies, perhaps.
Some of those border disputes are over now. Like over. There were pictures of like these Chinese convoys leaving, and it's no longer a disputed area, and the people that live there were like, what?
So Straya Life Sciences. Why would Straya Life Sciences be selling Xeon servers? It turns out they were founded in Moscow, moved to India, possibly for the express purpose of funneling things back to Russia. They've been caught. And Krista, your favorite architectural endeavor is the Line City.
What a terrible idea.
And we've seen some bad PR for it, but one documentary maker has rolled it all up into one big report.
New documentary reveals that 21,000 laborers have died working on the Saudi Vision 2030, which includes NEOM and since the construction began. But the bombshell later in the article is that there's over 100,000 people missing. So that number may even be higher.
I don't think they're going to find them.
No.
Remember the
maybe if you go down to the deepest tunnels under Yam.
We did a story like 6 months ago about some one of the executives on this was why 3 more people died. Why did you wake me up on a Sunday to deal with this? And the article mentions that
it was more than 3. It was like 20 some.
It's like, we need to.
Yeah.
It was like,
20 human souls. I'm going back to bed. I don't wake up for more than unless it's 50 or more.
And he was crapping on the native workers, and I guess they're importing some further South Asian workers. He was not happy with them either. He said they were poor workers, not giving enough of their blood. And the leaders of the world, some of them are unpopular. I don't know if you guys have noticed. Some people might want to do them harm. So they have security details. And those security details are populated by people who have to keep fitness in mind because they might have to, explode into action. But that has revealed a problem.
Location of world leaders, including Putin, Trump, and Macron, revealed by security team's Strava fitness app. And this will surprise no one that regularly watches this program, as we point out this kind of thing a lot.
They used a single quote for the quote and a single quote for the possessive. Poorly done. Who was this?
Well,
Independent.
It's not. Never blame the writer. It's always the editor. The editor sets the title.
So yeah, these guys, you go for a run before you start your day of bodyguarding. Well, all that data gets leaked, and Putin actually does not own the house that he seems to stay in a lot. It's weird. It's actually not listed anywhere.
That seemed like a good security strategy.
The Fitbit got busted with that with military bases. You remember?
Yeah.
Like, how did we not learn from that?
There was a military base somewhere where if you look at it on Google Earth, it looks like just barren desert, and it's like that's weird. There's like 20 things where people just run around this one empty area in the desert, and it's like, oh, it's not an empty area in the desert.
You guys remember when JPMorgan was giving out free money at the ATMs? Well, some people remember that being JPMorgan themselves.
JPMorgan began suing customers who allegedly stole thousands of dollars in quote-unquote infinite money glitch, including one guy apparently who deposited a $335,000 check, which they then let him withdraw $295,000 of, and he's just gone. Like he's living in the Bahamas.
He's turned off his Fitbit and he's gone.
So,
yeah. If you do get busted for that, I think you should take the plea because you are very guilty and you're not going to win.
How much, given the deviousness of the Wall Street types that run these banks, what do you think the over-under is that some part of this is a ploy to just say we should go to a cashless digital money society?
I thought about that for sure because the article kind of started to hint at that. Did you feel that? Yeah. Also the Germany article with the ATMs. They're like, well, these dumb Germans, they still use cash. What are they thinking? Is this maybe just a little bit of an article to make us afraid of cash?
It's weird when something political happens and you want to send that person a lot of money through PayPal. PayPal will take your money, but they don't get the money. The money doesn't go where you intend it to go. It's weird how that happens.
Well, it's also weird that every election we discover how fragile our election system is and how any endeavor at this scale is going to be run by people who, look at some of the people in this picture.
I mean, they had to pick that photo, right? Like,
but I mean, look at their hair.
it's in the computer.
These are some older folks, and that's generally who you get volunteering at the election centers.
People with free time.
Not a lot of technical acumen, perhaps.
Colorado agency improperly posted passwords for its election systems online. These are computers with BIOS passwords to stuff in the operating system, which were different and properly secured. I'm sure that whoever put that together, their heart was broken because they spent a lot of time securing all those machines individually. Not everything was the same password, but it's just like, you did what with my password file? Really? Wow. Okay.
There was also a story from here in the Bluegrass. I didn't add it, but somebody claimed that
there's video of that.
They were pressing one button and getting the other response.
Yeah.
They turned out to be true. But they do point out in both Colorado and Kentucky, these are not voting machines. These are ballot marking machines. So you got to take your little paper that they give you at the end and make sure that it says what you think it says.
And they will happily give you another one. Like, they'll void it and just be like, no, even if you print it. But is a touchscreen miscalibration. But you can also like change it until you're like, yes, print it. And then if it's the wrong thing on the print, you can just be like, this is wrong. Or they're like, okay. And then they destroy it and give you another one.
Don't trust it. Don't trust anything or anybody.
Well, just read it.
Trust store.level1text.com.
The light is gone, but we still work, darn it.
And this is, I should have cut this one because it's like, oh, dangerous new Android malware, but only if you sideload. I mean, if you're sideloading stuff you don't know about, you're asking for this.
FakeCall Android malware can now hijack bank calls. Basically, the fraudsters figure out who you are and it calls your phone. They're connected to the fraudster and not you.
No. This is it. When you install it, it sets itself as your primary calling app. Because, of course, you should have an app handling the phone part of your phone, right? And then when you go to call
our way as a country.
When you go to call the bank, it just intercepts the call, hits their call center, and they're like, oh, we'll help you with that.
Meanwhile, it's like that feature is there, but meanwhile, copy and paste doesn't work reliably anymore. Amazing. A+, Google. A+.
Because you might use that to steal our content. And here's one right from the horse's mouth. You know it's a good surveillance story whenever they're telling you exactly what they're about to do.
Flock Innovates to help agencies tackle sideshows. It's a terrible headline, but you should read it because this is saying when people get together and drag race, there's not necessarily police to handle it. Sometimes it can happen at 3 a.m. when there's no traffic on the road. But if you had this application, it would say, there's some unusual activity and a lot of people gathering in this one place. Someone should go check that out. And so this is basically just the app surveilling all the time and looking at everything that it sees, every point of data, and then saying, oh, I can see a bunch of people's electronics in one place in an unusual way. We should go do policing.
And audio. It records the audio, just like the gunshot cameras. You're a little out of touch, though, saying this is drag racing. That's not what this is. You know what a sideshow is? A sideshow is when a bunch of people get together, they shut down an intersection, and then they take turns doing very dangerous donuts around the intersection. And some people will run out and like get in the path of the car and freak out and then dive out of the way at the last second. That's what our youth is doing to entertain themselves these days.
There were places in my hometown where like people would race, or you just went to there was a particular parking lot outside of like one of the tractor places, and people would just go sit there until like 3 a.m.
Racing I kind of get, right? I
mean,
we've been racing since we started using horses. Well, we raced on foot.
Yeah, foot race.
But just driving in a circle to see if someone dies?
Yeah.
Can we redirect some of that energy to like, we should plant a bunch of trees in this section of the sidewalk because
that costs money.
After the last storm, all the trees died, and trees can totally grow there. Let's plant some trees.
You could try. I don't think you get any traction.
It's like the sidewalk's kind of uneven here. So boys, let's get together on a Saturday and dig up this broken piece of sidewalk and pour us a new slab there. That sounds like a lot of fun.
Harder to do when you're drunk.
Is it? I mean, judging by some of the work crews, I don't know. They seem to be better at their job.
I wish I could remember that acronym because I remember thinking like, oh, that's such a good, just people standing around as usual or something like that.
All right, well, that is the last story for today. We will be back on Wednesday. Bye.